Welcome back. Now, guess what? I've got a book in my hands called The Villager, and it's written by Feyi Olubodun, who is the former CEO of Inside Publicis Nigeria and the author of this book, The Villager. Now, this book it talks about how Africans consume brands and is aimed at brand owners, especially the international ones, who are looking to conquering new markets, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa as well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, sir.
Thank you very much.
So this is a good book. I like it. I've been going through it. It's got a lot of personal stories from you. And at the beginning, of course, the person who did the initial review and the forward in the book, Peter Stevenson Wright.
Yeah.
Now, he said that this is an indispensable guide to the mindset of the African consumer. Why did he say that?
Well, I think it's because if you were to search today for any written material that describes the psychology of the African, you'll find very few out there. The first one that was written in 1999 by a man called John Lasseter, who is a Westerner. There's hardly anything written by Africans about Africans. And this is the only book as of today that presents in a structured way a proprietary framework that describes the psychology of the African. And that is why that comment was made.
I like it. I like the way you did the breakdown and the stories you told. The first story that I saw in the book that I thought was quite interesting was you sitting on a Delta Airlines flight. And so they were boasting that they were going to serve you guys jollof rice, right? And then suddenly they bring you a plate of jollof rice and it had okra in it. So tell us that story.
Well, I mean, it's that story is just wonderful. I mean, 13-hour flight in there, and every airline serves the local cuisine on the leg of the flight, and they serve jollof rice and put okra in it. They didn't even dice the okra. They just put it in huge pieces.
Yeah.
And it's just a classic example of not paying attention to cultural nuances.
Exactly. Not understanding the people you're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, before you eat rice and okra in Nigeria, you're suffering.
Yeah, exactly. So, from there, you then told, a number of other stories that a lot of people who come to Nigeria or who come to Africa, a lot of times just try to impose whatever it is or whatever perceptions that they have on the people. But one of the things that I noted in the book was that in discussing the mindset of the African is usually always aspirational. Like we're trying to move from one place to the other. Talk to us about that journey.
So you see, the African is aspirational because largely most Africans travel from the village to the city. When they make that journey, they carry with them the dreams of the people in the village. They have to succeed because they're now the portal to the economic possibilities in the city. And that's why I say that the African consumer is a villager, but the village is no longer a physical location. It's now a psychological construct that it carries with him. And that is fueled very strongly by a sense of aspiration, because he wants to always reach and go beyond himself for a lot of reasons that are largely community-based.
I like that, because when I was reading that chapter 4, when you said the African consumer is a villager, I said, is this man abusing us? I don't understand. But when I read it and I saw the journey that you were describing, I understood it. But when, you were talking about malls, for instance, at some point, the fact that suddenly we now have a mall culture in a place like Nigeria where, everywhere you go now, there's a mall around the corner.
Yeah.
And especially for the very highly populated areas, when you go to the malls, there's lots of people there.
Yeah.
So, and this also describes a kind of mindset, because it looks like people are just trying to acquire things. What's your own view of this with regards to the book?
I think one of the symbols that malls represent for us now is it symbolizes like an aggregation of aspirational elements that we strive towards. And I'll never forget the first time when the Palms opened in Lekki then, and there was only one ShopRite. And it was the 23rd of December that year, and some people went shopping. And there's these two ladies that came all the way from Agege to go to VI to just go, and they just bought a couple of cubes of Maggi, but what they wanted was the ShopRite nylon bag.
And the experience.
And to say, look, I'm shopping now in this kind of environment. It's an upliftment for me. It's symbolizing where I'm going to. And also, malls today are like churches of aspiration, really. That's what they've become for consumers now.
Right, I can see that. So basically, with a book like this, if an international brand or someone trying to go into Africa or even start a business in Africa, what should then be the mindset of such a brand, whether it's a big brand or a growing brand?
Yeah. I think the mindset that's required is to first of all realize that culture is not good or bad. It's just is. It's a way that a set of people have decided to live their lives. And you've got to look at that culture with a sense of open-mindedness and deliberately understand how that culture is, how you can leverage that to market your brands to your target consumers and all of that. That's really, really very key. You mustn't come and assume that the way things were where you're coming from is the way to be wherever you're going to, whichever country you're going on the continent.
I like the story that you told of the taxify driver that speaks only Yoruba but can use Google Maps.
Yeah.
Because that also tells you about the importance of local knowledge.
Yeah.
The fact that I speak another language. I don't speak English, but I can use technology.
Yeah.
Why is that important also?
Because at the end, the use of technology is not, there are a lot of things that aren't culture-based. The Indians taught the rest of the world programming, and they did that without learning to speak English. China has educated their country without using English as a language, and I always argue that really, if we make English an elective in our schools in Nigeria, we can eradicate illiteracy in one generation. Because the woman that sells bolly by the side of the road understands finances, she knows what to do and all of that. It's the same way that the taxi driver knows he's a local guy, has tribal marks, but he understands the fact that if I push this app this way, it tells me where to go.
And I can read the map.
I can read the map, I can use it. I don't have to know how to speak English to read the map. And use that. And so the nuances like that can actually drive a faster rate of technology adoption, for example.
I like that because it's one of the things, because I was wondering if that's one of the things that accounts for a lot of the backwardness and underdevelopment that we see in Africa. The fact that it looks like we're trying to learn their language first before applying the technology in our situation. Is that what you also believe as well?
Yeah, I believe, first of all, that, I think our culture as Africans has inherent in it values that can actually drive us towards growth and development. But we need to be proud of those values and we need to embrace them. Secondly, yes, you're right. I do believe that knowledge is knowledge and language is language. You can acquire knowledge without necessarily acquiring a particular language. And so, emphasizing in our education system that you have to learn English before you learn mathematics is really not right.
Because, it's crazy. You have to learn English before you learn science. You have to learn English.
Yeah, it's not...
Anyway, so finally, we're going to be rounding off very soon. You talked about religion, because you cannot talk about the African without talking about religion. And you talked about the pillar of religion in this book. Talk to us about that.
So you see, the West, a fundamental difference between religion in the West and religion in Africa is that Africans are religious culturally. The Westerner is scientific in his mind, and then religion is a choice. And so in Africa, you have to believe in a God, largely because our locus of control is external. You can decide the God, it doesn't matter, but you have to believe in a God. That's why we say, by God's grace, or as we like to say, by God's special grace and all of that.
Yeah.
So, and that is an element of culture that we can use. It's not something that brands should shy away from. And the way to approach it is to avoid the practices, which is what is different from culture to culture, but focus on the from religion to religion, but focus on the belief. Every religion believes that there's a God that has a great destiny for you to achieve fame and fortune, and you must do good to others. That cuts across every religion.
I love it. This book, I think, is fantastic. And I think anyone who's interested in doing big things in Africa should get it. Thank you so much, Feyi Olubodun, for joining us. And also, congratulations, your new endeavor and stuff like that after Insight.